Hey Stampers, Diane Dimich here with ddStamps.com, and today I'm going to show you how I did this card using an aqua painter and some ink pads to go ahead and do a watercolor on this card. And I think you're going to be surprised how easy it really is. So to begin with, I went ahead and I started with the stamp set Indescribable Gift by Stampin' Up. This is a great stamp set in the Occasions catalog in 2015. I love this blossom. But this is a great set for Easter, but it's also perfect for thinking of you, happy birthday, sympathy. There's so many things that you could do with it. So, and I'm also using Blushing Bride cardstock, which is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. A piece of our watercolor paper, which is 4 1/4 or 5 1/4 by 4. And then I brought in some Blushing Bride ribbon too. So to begin with, what you're going to do is I am going to emboss this, and I'm going to use white embossing powder and my Versamark ink, and I'm also going to use my embossing buddy. And the embossing buddy, you just run that over the cardstock, and what that does is it just takes the static out of the cardstock so that the actual embossing powder will stick to where you want it to. So using the Versamark ink and this big blossom stamp, I'm going to go ahead and ink this up. And Versamark ink is just a clear, sticky ink. It's great for lots of things. This is one of the things it's fabulous for. I'm going to go ahead and stamp the big blossom down on there. And you notice I'm kind of holding it for a while. It's because the watercolor paper has some fibers in it. And I want to make sure that that ink gets down inside those fibers. And then I'm going to come in with some white embossing powder. And I'm going to just use a piece of copy paper. And I just do that so that I can sprinkle that on liberally, tap it off. You probably won't be able to see it, but it's on there. Oh yeah, you can, a little bit, with the powder. And then I can just take this sheet of paper and bring that back down and get all that embossing powder back in the jar. And what I have found with embossing powder is that it seems to grow. So once you've opened the can, it's hard to get it all back in. I will be right back. I'm going to run and heat set my embossing. Okay, so I went ahead and heat set that embossing, and it's got a little bit of a warp to it on that cardstock. So I'm going to grab some washi tape. And I like to use washi tape because it doesn't stick, so it's easy to pull up. I'm actually just going to attach this down to my work surface because I want to make sure that I don't get my paper too warped. It'll unwarp as it dries, but it's nice to have it laying flat because the colors move better. They don't all move in the same direction. That's just going to kind of hold it in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my aqua painter, and an aqua painter is just a paintbrush, and down in here in the tube it has, oh, that sun is going to beat in here today. I don't want to complain about the sunshine. That's almost wrong. Anyway, this is full of water, and so it's easy to go ahead and just have a continuous flow of water. So I'm going to go ahead and squeeze this and get her started. Get that water coming out of there. And we're using watercolor paper, so we can add lots of water to this and it's going to hold up. What you're going to do to begin with is sometimes when I'm doing this technique, I will take that stamp that I'm actually doing and I'll lay it here so I can see the image that I'm working with, because it's kind of hard to see it on the, oh, I got it put that way, so there we go. So you're just going to add water, and I'm going to first start with this big flower, and this flower I want in Blushing Bride. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Blushing Bride, and I know I'm going to be using a lot, so I'm just going to add a couple of drops of Blushing Bride in there, because that's what I'm going to use for my paint palette. So once I've got that on there, you can see I'm just dropping color in, and that water is making it bleed out. Let me zoom in here. So I'm just going to drop some colors around on that flower where I had added in the water, and I'm really letting the water do the work. Then I'll move on to my next flower. You can see on this one I had a lot of ink left on my aqua painter. So it's really going to lay down a lot of color to begin with. But then you can come in with the darkest and again move that around. Into your shadowed spots. If you want to, you can just take a piece of paper and brush that off, and then go into your next flower. Add the water, and then come in with the ink color. Okay, so it looks like all the Blushing Bride is done. One of the things that the embossing powder does is it kind of holds the watercolor into the image so that it's not going to run and bleed all over. You can go out of the lines because it looks fine, but it just gives it a nice soft look to it. So I'm going to go ahead and keep watercoloring and adding a few more colors. I'm also using Pear Pizzazz and then Early Espresso for the stem, and so I'll get that done. And then the last color I'm going to use is a little Early Espresso. And I'm going to come in and do the stem. So I'm really going to get that with water in there, and then just take a little bit of the Early Espresso and dot that in there, and you can see how it moves it out with that water. And then I'm going to do the same thing up here with this piece of a stem. Just kind of bleeds out, and it looks great. And so I am going to come in and just do a couple of these other little stems with just a little bit of pizzazz, Pear Pizzazz, just so those flowers don't look like they're floating out there in the middle of nowhere. Okay. Then the last thing that I did is I'm coming in with Pool Party. And this was probably my favorite part of this technique. Is what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in with some Pool Party and add just a little bit of shading, which just really adds to this card. So I'm going to add water here. You see how I'm just pushing out water, bringing a little Pool Party, and then blend it out. And that really makes that white embossing powder pop. And there you have it. That's how you do the watercolor technique. And every card is going to look a little different. Every card is going to have a little bit more detail or whatnot to it, or different shading. But I just love the look of that. With that white, it's just fabulous. And then to my piece of cardstock, I tied it with a piece of the Blush Blossom ribbon and added it onto my cardstock. And it's good to go. It's a beautiful card. Hope you enjoyed that. If you haven't already done so, you want to visit my website maybe and get onto my mailing list, where I send you tips, tricks, and techniques every week. Thanks, and have a great day.